Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fifth meet of the New South Wales Milers Series for 2022. This is the fifth of five meets held across the course of December, January, February and March. Just short of 1,000 athletes have competed in this series across the course of the summer, and the events which round out the program here tonight include the Community 5K, the 400 metres, the 800 metres and the 1,500 metres. Have a quick look at the timetable, and we're due to get underway in a couple of minutes with the Community 5K event. That will then be followed by the graded 800 metres and 1,500 metre races, and we'll get into the A races from about 8:15 this evening with the women's 400 metres, followed by the men's 400. And then with the men's and women's 800 metres and the women's and men's 1,500 metres with the final event to wrap up at about 10 to 9. We'll have a quick look at the start list for the Community 5K, because you can see them getting ready on the back straight. In position number 1, Ron Schweibel of Sydney Striders, Emily Sorensen. In 2, David O'Brien and Jane Wagner, both from from Northern Suburbs and Hornsby District, respectively. Andrew Townsend from Renegade Runners. They're inside Derek Pontus and Scotty Roots. John Binfield and Jared Reardon next for Run Crew. Outside them in position 10 is Monty Hannaford. Then we've got Martin Klassen and Rory Campbell, also of Run Crew. Charles Hunter from Scots, Chris Gatt from the Delta Running Project, Nick Walker of UTS North's Athletics, Alistair George is on his outside, Tom Hyman in HIP 17 for Sydney Athletics Academy inside of Brendan Jury, Lachlan Oakes of Delta, and Jared Heaney rounds out a field of 20 in the Community 5K. And it looks like they're just about ready for a start over on the back straight to get away with New South Wales Milers 5. So off they go in the Community 5K. We've had a few scratchings from the field, but still quite a few around there. Hip number 20 and 19 finding their way to the front of the field there. That's Jared Heaney of North Belfast Harriers and Lachlan Oakes of Delta. Heaney a long way from Ireland, but good to see the international representation. Then just sitting in behind them is Brendan Jury and Tom Hyman, Alistair George also there as well. So they head around to the back straight for the first time. And as is often the case in this Community 5K, field just starting to get strung out a little bit early. And it'll be Lockie Oakes of Delta to do the early leading in this 5,000. Let's go through the first lap in about 73 seconds. So it's pretty decent running. Oakes' personal best of 15:46. So there's a couple of sub 16-minute athletes in this field in the form of Heaney and Oakes. And just looking in behind them with Drury and Hyman PBs in the 1620s and 40s. So some pretty serious athletes at the front of the field. And then just looking back in behind them is Alistair George as well. Also with a PB just under 1630 at 1628. Having a little bit look further back in the field and looking there at Jared Reardon of Run Crew leading the second pack in the run. Jared with a PB of 16:29, so I'm guessing he's doing a little bit of a pacing job back there. A few Run Crew athletes in this field with Martin Klassen as well. There's a shot of Reardon there running with Monty Hannaford. PB of 17 flat. And coming up to the first K, this is a pretty decent schedule, especially for a community race. They're going to be outside 15-minute pace, but not a long way outside. 13:07, 13:08, thereabouts through the first K. 3:08, I should say. That puts them, what's that, around about 15:40 pace. So they would be right around about PB schedule for Heaney and Oakes. Heaney's PB 15:27 and Oakes at 15:46. And they're just starting to open that gap behind them to Drury, Hyman and George. And here's a good shot of the pack in behind them. So Reardon in there for Run Crew, running with Charles Hunter in the Scots College yellow singlet. Martin Klassen of Run Crew in there as well. And now John Binfield on screen too. And a good look at this chase back now. We've also got David O'Brien in there for Northern Suburbs Athletics, PB of 18:07. So this second pack just starting to spread out a little bit. We can see Emily Sorensen on screen there as well. But Heaney and Oakes running together, and then it's just Drury in behind him. And Hynam and George. Sitting behind as well. So I think looking at our lone female athlete, I think in the field, Emily Sorensen from South Australia, PB of 20:56, set at the Sydney 10 last year. And this is the 2K mark for our leaders. So going through there in about 6:15. So they've picked it up a little bit, only by a couple of seconds, but 3:08 to 6:15. So still holding around that 15:40 tempo for the leaders. And probably a little bit closer to the 16-minute mark in there behind them for Drury, Hyman and George. But good running at the front. So they picked it up just slightly, that second kilometre. 3:08, 3:09 down to about a 3:07. And a little bit of a move at the front of this second pack with Charles Hunter from the Scots College going to the front of Jared Reardon, who looks like he's doing a bit of a pace job for the run crew team there of Monty Hannaford, Martin Klassen and Rory Campbell, all of run crew. So it looks like they've got a bit of a All Blacks pack going. Some very good running here from Tom Hyman at the front of the field. 49 years of age, Hyman from Sydney Athletics Academy. Has a PB of 16:20 set in February of this year at the 5K Championships, but running very strongly in the Masters age group. He's boxing onto these couple of younger leaders very well in Heaney and Oakes, who come through 2600 now. That'll be 3K next time around. Quite nice conditions here for distance running at the Crest. Temperatures come right down. In Sydney, it's about 25 degrees or thereabouts at the moment. Some light breeze around, but no real wind to speak of. And still no rain forecasted for the night, although it is a bit overcast. Hopefully the weather stays kind to us. If it stays like this for the rest of the evening, we should have some very good middle distance running conditions a little bit later on for the A races. Saw plenty of personal bests here in the fourth milers meet. A bit of a wave there from Reardon back to his run crew teammate Martin Klassen, trying to keep pulling him along. Now this is 3K for the leaders, going through in about 9:31 or thereabouts, so that K did slow down quite a bit. That was about a 3:15, 3:16 on the back of a couple of 3:08s or thereabouts. So they did come off a bit in that third kilometre. A good battle going on at the front here between Oakes and Heaney. They may well just be sharing the workload. Boxing on well as Drury too. He's only 4 or 5 metres off the back of the leading pair. Hynam still running strongly in behind them. And about 5 metres off the back of him is Alistair George with a PB of 16:28. And he'll be running about that tempo at the moment. So a mile to go for the leaders. So coming up to 1,200 to go for the leaders. Still working together, the front pair. And they'll be 4K when they get around to the back. So we mentioned it started out quite quick, 3:08, 3:07. Just slowed up a bit in that third kilometre down to 3:15. And we're getting the 4K mark here. So they're going to go through there in about 12:50. So again, it's slowed a little bit again, down to about a 3:19 for that kilometre. So the early pace has come off a bit. If they hold that tempo, they'll be looking around about the 16:10 mark or thereabouts. Be outside of both of these guys' PBs, but they've also done a lot of work out the front by themselves. So coming down now with 800 to go. And a good run in behind them here from Drury. Drury with a PB of 16:45, so he's sitting a lot closer to personal best tempo than the front two, and he's able to hold this pace. He may well be looking at a personal best, which would be a big run, having done most of the work solo. And looking in behind them at the next two, we've got Hyman and George. Through 4,400 now for the leaders. Shot there on screen as well of Emily Sorensen, PB of 20:56. So a bit of the move at the front now as they'll pick up the bell. I think the working together has gone out the window. Jared Heaney hits the front and gets the bell with about a 5 metre lead or thereabouts, stretching out to 10 now on Lockie Oakes. And good running in behind them as well from Drury, who may well be on personal best tempo here. Only 15:10 on the clock. He's 16:45 his mark, so that's definitely on the cards here. This run crew group still working together of Campbell, Klassen and Hannaford. Our leader, Heaney, through with a couple of hundred to run, and then Drury in behind them, 15:33 on the clock for Drury, so he's on track for a big personal best here. But at the front of the field, it's Jared Heaney of North Belfast Harriers, long way from Ireland. He's going to take out the Community 5K here at the fifth meet of the Milers. May just get under 16 minutes and will do so. 15:57 or thereabouts, closing at 3:07. That's great closing. And a good run in behind him from Lockie Oakes. And Drury's the run of the race. He's going to wipe about more than 30 seconds off his personal best with a 16:09. Down from a PB of 16:45. So huge run from Drury. Hyman in behind him now. Come over the line about 16:25 or thereabouts. And Alistair George just coming into the straight now. George with a PB of 16:28, going to be just outside that, and a fast finish in behind him from Jared Reardon, who did some pacing duties early on. And big finish here from the Scots College athlete of Charles Hunter. Had a seed time of 17 minutes down and went under that. about 16:56, 57. And here comes the run crew pace group. It's a little intra-club battle here, which it looks like Rory Campbell is going to take out ahead of Hannaford. Campbell 17:08, Hannaford PB, Hannaford 17 flat, so the boys just outside their PBs. Classed in about 17:11. So still a few out there. Got on screen now Emily Sorensen. And also run cruiser John Binfield with a PB of 16:12. A big finish here from David O'Brien from Tassie. 18:07 his PB, which he's gone under, 17:57. So well done to David O'Brien. And still on course is John Binfield here of Run Crew. About 18:30 there for John. And we've still got Emily Sorensen. Emily with a PB of 21:05, so I think 800 to go for Emily. Just looking ahead in the program, there's some good racing later on tonight. We've got a big field in the men's 1500 A race, about 16 of them. Some headliners there. Kane Shields, Harry McGill's up as well from the ACT. Max Rosen, Harm Sharp in that field. The women's 1500, also a strong field with Nicola Hogg there, the World Junior qualifier going around. Allegra McGivern also chasing after a World Junior qualifier. Women's 800 is a great race. Nicola Hogg's entered twice, so we'll see which one she runs. But Laura Roth, the former Australian champion, also entered in that race. Matilda Ryan has won 2 Albie Thomas 800 metres, I think. Georgia Wassell due to line up, as well as Amy Bennett, who's been having a huge season. Ava Honore, the youngster from Sutherland, also due to go around. In the men's 800, we'll have Dickinson, James Healy, Riley McGowan, Josh Atkinson headlining. As we hear Emily Sorensen picking up the bell in about 20:31. And the 400s are also handy races as well, with Ian Halpin and Jordan Cemento. Mason Cohen going around. I think Halpin might be scratching actually. Keegan Bell and Corey Firminger. Oscar Pintiaric racing as well. So watching Emily Sorensen come into the straight in the Community 5K, the South Australian We're just outside her personal best, but Sorensen, 21-year-old, will come down to round out the field for the community 5K here at the 5th meet of the Bankstown Milers. Stops the clock at about 22:20. So looking ahead on the program, we're still pretty much on schedule. For those here in the stadium, if you're in any of the graded 800 metre races, you need to be collecting your hip numbers from the tent down at the front. For those watching at home, here's the timetable for the rest of the program. So due to get away any minute now with the men's 800 metre D race. That'll be followed by the C's and the B's in the 800. And 7:36 will be underway with the 1,500 metre graded races down to D in the men's and C in the women's. B in the women's, pardon me. And at 8:14 we'll be underway with the first of our A races with the women's and men's 400. They'll be followed at 8:26 by the men's and women's 800 metres, and at 8:42 by the women's and men's 1,500s. We'll have a look at the start list now for the men's D 800 metres just before they get underway. And a small field here, but Chandra Milers for Cherrybrook in 1, Tony Sinibaldi of Bankstown in 2, Brad Sharp of UTS Norths in 3, and Cooper Rob Jackson of Parramatta City Athletics goes in lane number 4. That's the field for the men's 800 metre D race. Basically, as soon as they're in shot, you can go to that.
Is George going to be moving it around?
No, he'll stay on it, yeah.
Papa's dad? Papa's dad?
Papa, yeah. So off they go in the D race of the men's 800 metres. That clock on screen will be a couple of seconds slow, but a small field here being the first of the graded events. And I apologise for the pronunciation in advance, but Mida Janselage in 1, running with Sinibaldi, Sharp and Rob Jackson. And Tony Sinibaldi on his home track for Bankstown goes to the front of the field. Go through the 200 in about 32 seconds or so. So good running for the Masters athlete. And behind him another Masters athlete in the form of Brad Sharp, who's frequent in these miles meets all through the season. And in behind him is the youngster Cooper Rob Jackson from Parramatta City Athletics, and then Midiana Salage in behind them, running in 4th. But Sinibaldi with a lead of about 10 metres as they come into the straight for the first time. Sinibaldi with a PB of 2:24, so on that schedule now, although it does look to be labouring, so about 68 seconds, 69 through 400. And a good example of all-comers racing going on in behind him with the battle between the Masters athlete Sharp and young Cooper Rob Jackson, just 14 from Parramatta City. Same club as the great Brandon Stark. And Muti Ensilage sitting in behind them in 4th, just trailing about 10 metres off the back. But Sinibaldi running strongly up the back straight, and will run through the 600 metres in around about 1:46 or thereabouts. So Sinibaldi trying to better that personal best end of 2:24 set at the State Masters Championships about 4 years ago now. has a season's best of 2:28, so we'll have a look for that as well. Rob Jackson hasn't given up the ghost on taking out this D race and coming hard at Cinnabaldi now, closing that gap up as they come into the straight. Cinnabaldi trying to lift and respond. Rob Jackson coming at him sharp in behind them. Not gone yet. Cinnabaldi trying to hang on, but the young legs may prevail and do, with Cooper Rob Jackson getting over the line 2:24 or thereabouts. Cinnabaldi can take comfort in what will be a season's best. Brad Sharp in behind them in third. And Midi Unselage of Cherrybrook will come over the line to run a personal best of about 2:40, 2:41, bettering his previous mark of 2:42. So we'll keep rolling through the start list here and have a look at the start list for the women's 800 metre C race. Annie Fotheringham in 1 for the University of New South Wales. Julia Meeker in 2 for Balmain, coached by Brad Woods. Emily Sue of Randwick Botany, coached by Alicia Kachan. In 4, Leah Madar of Bankstown Athletics, coached by Dad Victor. And Deborah Drennan of UTS North's Athletics in lane number 6. That's the field for the women's 800 metre C race. Lane 4's in the wrong spot too. Lane 2's on the wrong mark. Lane 2's on the wrong mark. So off they go in the women's 800 metre C race. Almost a full field here, just a couple of scratchings and a promotion up into the B race. But we are left with Fotheringham, Mika, Sue and Matar. And Fotheringham on the inside of the track goes to the front early from the University of New South Wales, a PB of 2:18. 2:28, pardon me. Matar just tucking in there behind Julia Mika, who actually now comes around and takes the lead with Emily Sue on her shoulder from Randwick Botany, and Matar back, one off the rail in the early stages of the women's 800 metre C. So sitting at the front is Mika with a PB of 2:26, coached by Brad Woods, and Emily Sue, who ran well at this event at Milers 4 with a PB of 2:23, now finds her way to the front. Matar on a home track in the Bankstown kit just sits third in the run, getting a lovely little trail in behind there. And the early leader, Fotheringham, will sit fourth as they pick up the bell in around about 69 seconds or thereabouts. And Emily Sue at the front of this field for the famous blue and gold of Randwick Botany Harriers gets a lovely little sit. In behind her does Julia Mika. And then Matar sits third in the running as they just start to string out a little bit as they head up the back straight for the last time. Fotheringham sitting fourth in the run, but Emily Sue with probably all eyes on the clock now as she looks at her PB of 2:23. So they run through the 600 in about 1:47 or thereabouts. Mika still hanging around, so is Matar, and Fotheringham completes a line of about 20 metres that covers the field. But Emily Sue will lead them into the straight in the women's 800 metre sea race. And with 100 to run, has a gap of about 10 metres on Mika, who hasn't given up the ghost here. Mika trying to come at Sue. Sue will have to lift and respond. Mika lifting hard for Balmain and goes past Sue, the youngster, just 13, with a PB of 2:26, not anymore. Comes home and wins the women's 800 metre C in about 2:23. Emily Sue in behind her. Matar in 2:29 will also probably just pick up a PB, and Fotheringham rounds out the field for the women's 800 metre C race. But a great last 100 metres and good tactical racing from young Julia Mika. Keep having a look at the start list. And the men's 800 metre C next up with Simon Rental of Sydney Pacific, Manly Warringah. Corey Denier next on the list for Sutherland Districts, coached by Paul Orenday. Oliver Vidiak of Try Running, one of the Canberra visitors from Des Proctor's group. Tom Partland of the King's School, coached by Ben Gavin. Jerome Etteridge is in 5 for Illawong Rewsby, coached by Dools. Chu Hut Tan of UTS North's Athletics, coached by Ashley and Ryan. Ken Wilson in 7 of Athletics East, coached by Peter Good. And Paul Raptis of Home Club Bankstown rounds out the field of 8 for the men's 800 metre C race. So if they go in the men's 800 metre C race, a couple of scratchings from this field, but still 5 in it. And a quick start from the Sutherland athlete, Corey Deneen, on the inside of the track, and he'll lead them up the back straight for the first time as they cross. Sitting in behind him is Oliver Vidiak of Try Running, one of the Canberra visitors from Des Proctor's stable. And Paul Raptis on his home track looks to get across them and will take a sit. One back, one out from the rail. Chu Hut Tan of UTS North's also getting a little bit of cover in there, tucks in 4th. And the Sydney Pacific athlete Simon Rentel will bring up the group of 5 as they head into the front straight for the first time, about 47 seconds on the clock. Deneen with a comfortable lead over Raptis. The only one sitting out wide at the moment is Tan, as they string out a little bit as they come down and pick up the bell. Bang on about 60 seconds. So good running from Deneen at the front, PB of 2:04. He'll have to run pretty evenly to put that in jeopardy. Raptis also running strongly in behind him, and the front 2 have opened up a gap of about 10 metres or so to the balance of the field in Vidiak, Rentel and Tan. But up the back straight for the last time, it's Deneen at the front, still sitting on personal best schedule. If he's able to hold this and bring it home, he's going to go through the 600 about 90 seconds. So on PB pace, Paul Raptis running strongly in behind him as well, and still looking relatively comfortable as Vidiak ahead of Rentel and Tan. But Deneen has strung them out at the front of the field over this middle stages of the race, and will come into the straight in the men's 800 metre C with a lead of about 12 metres back to Paul Raptis. All eyes on the clock for Deneen now. Personal best of 2:04 set at the first milers meet this year. And he's going to come home and should knock off that PB, and will, with about 2:02 unofficial. A big finish late from Vidiak, got over the top of Raptis to come home in about 2:06. And then came Rentel and Tan to close out the field in the men's 800 metre C race. Tony, is there any live results or is something up? So just a reminder for those in the stadium, you need to collect your hip numbers about 10 minutes prior to your race from the tent at the start-finish area. There's no other athlete check-in. You just need to collect your hip numbers about 10 minutes before your race and then head straight to the start. The next race on the track is the women's 800-metre B race. A big field of 9 here with Aspen Lambert of Trinity, coached by James Fitzgerald, going in position number 1. Giselle Enland of Sydney Athletics Academy in 2. Charlotte O'Dowd for UTS North, part of the Central Performance Track team of Ben Liddy in 3. Amelia Thornthwaite of Sydney Athletics Academy in 4. Claudia Meeker of Balmain, coached by Brad Woods in 5. Katia Bjorkman of Sydney Athletics Academy in 6. Gemma Bratton and Chloe Davis, both of UTS Norths, go in 7 and 8. And Maggie Hyman of Sydney Athletics Academy rounds out the field for the women's 800-metre B race. So off they go in the women's 800-metre B race. Good field here, full field of 7. And starting quickly on the inside is Charlotte O'Dowd of UTS Norths, as well as Mika from Balmain on the outside. And they'll be the first 2 through the markers as Mika darts across and will pick up the lead of the race. Going well on her outside as well as Heinen of Sydney Athletics Academy, looking to get into a position of prominence. And Charlotte O'Dowd of Norths will sit one back on the fence and pick up the trail from the early leader in Claudia Meeker. So that's the leading group as they head into the straight for the first time. And Meeker and O'Dowd putting a bit of a gap into the rest of the field here. The chase pack is led by Giselle Enland of Sydney Athletics Academy, and she's sitting just in front of her teammate in Maggie Hyman. In behind them, Chloe Davis in the red of Norths, and then comes Bjorkman with Lambert at the back of the field. But 65 seconds or so through the first 400 for Meeker, who gets on a bike and kicks again at the front of the field, tries to put another couple of metres into O'Dowd and manages to do that. Personal best of 2:17 for Meeker, coached by Brad Woods, as they head up the back straight for the final time. And she's extending that lead at the front of the field. Back to Charlotte O'Dowd, PB of 2:18. So just a second behind the personal best mark of Meeker. So quite close together, these athletes. But Meeker having the better run tonight as she opens up a gap of about 10 metres or so back to O'Dowd. The rest of the field starting to come back to them now, with Bjorkman of Sydney Athletics Academy doing the best work in this late stage of the race. Now goes past O'Dowd and looks to get up to the back of Meeker, who's coming into the straight. Also running well is Giselle Enland. But Mika at the front of the field still has a lead of about 15 metres or so. 2:04 on the clock. Her PB we're looking for is 2:17, and that's going to go for sure. So Claudia Mika comes home and smashes a PB by about 3 or 4 seconds to win the women's 800B. Bjorkman in behind her. Then comes Enland. Little gap back to Hyman. Chloe Davis in behind. Then the early leader O'Dowd. And Lambert rounds out the field in the women's 800-metre B, all in under 2:30. So good racing there in the women's 800-metre B race. Go straight into the men's start list with Brody Elborn due to run in lane number 1 for Randwick Botany Harriers. Harrison Jerd in 2 for Sutherland, coached by Jordan Anderson. In 3 we have Brett Halls for Run Crew. Josh Balch of the Illawarra Blue Stars. Edward Purebrick of the Scots College, coached by Drew Fryer of Randwick. Benjamin Crow of Randwick Botany, coached by Jordan Williams in 6. Ben Maloney of Trinity Athletics, but coached by Run Crew in 7. And James Bartholomew's of Try Running, another one of Des Proctor's athletes from the ACT, comes to run in lane number 8 on the outside. That's the start list for the men's 800-metre B race. So just getting themselves organised for the 800B. After this, we've got the graded 1,500-metre races. So that's the men's D and C. They'll be followed by the women's B and the men's B. So for those here in the stadium, if you haven't got your hip numbers yet and you're in those graded 1,500-metre races, you need to be doing that now. So off they go in the men's 800-metre B race. A couple of scratchings from this field, but still a solid one. And a pretty fast start from the Illawarra Blue Stars athlete, Josh Balch. And he'll just stay wide and work his way across. And over on the inside in behind him will be Halls and Jerd. But it will be Balch who leads them through the first 200 in about 27 seconds or so. So really on their bike. Little gap back then to Brett Halls of Run Crew and Harrison Jerd of Sutherland. And then sitting in behind them is James Bartholomew's of Try Running, Des Proctor's group. And then comes Randwick Botany Harriers, Brody Elborn. So Balch with a PB of 152. Serious running at the front of the field is going to take them through the first 400 in a pretty decent tempo of about 56 seconds or so. And pretty single file, not a lot in it. No real moves coming in the race just yet. Balch has done all the work from the start. Halls is now starting to peel out a little bit wider for Run Crew just to put himself in a position to run past Balch. And also Brody Elborn of Randwick Botany starting to get a good little sit in behind them and looks to go with Halls as he tries to get up into the shoulder of Balch. Harrison Jerd still getting plenty of cover. One back on the rail. And Bartholomew has drifted back just to the back of this field. Move starting to come now with Halls trying to get up onto the shoulder of Balch. Little gap back in them behind them to Jerd, and Elborn just starting to fade a little bit off this lead group of 3. But Balch has made every poster winner so far. Comes into the straight. Still leading. Brett Hall's trying to come back at him. Jerd trying to get a gun run up the rail, and Elborn's hanging around as well. But Bolch is going to do enough to hang on here, I fancy. Makes every post a winner and comes home and takes out the men's 800 metre B just under 2 minutes. I think Jerd actually got up for second then ahead of Halls and Elborn, and Bartholomew's wasn't far behind them in 5th position. And at the end of our graded 800 metre races for the evening. Always good racing in the Bs in particular. We'll bring you some official results while we've got you. It's a bit of an update on those. So back from the Community 5K, the first race of the night, confirmation of Jared Heaney's win in 15.59, ahead of Lockie Oakes in 16.04 and Brendan Drury in 16.11. Emily Sorensen, the lone female athlete in that field, with a time of 22.20. In the men's 800 metre D race, confirmation of Cooper Rob Jackson's win for Parramatta, the youngster, in 2:25.21. Tony Sinaboldi of Bankstown in second in 2:25.37, and Brad Sharp of Norse third over the line in 2:29.38. In the women's 800 metre C, confirmation of Julia Meeker's win for Balmain in 2:24.16. Emily Sue for Ramwick second in 2:25.65, and Leah Matter of Bankstown Sports home in 2:30 even for third. In the men's 800 metre C race, confirmation of Corey Deneen's win for Sutherland in 2:02.51. Oliver Vidiak second for try running in 2:05.65, and Paul Raptis of Bankstown third over the line in 2:06.49. In the women's 800 metre B race, Claudia Meeker took the win for Balmain in 2:14.64. Katia Bjorkman of Sydney Athletics Academy 2:18.59 in second, just ahead of her teammate Giselle Enland third over the line in 2:20.74. And results already through for the men's 800 metre B. Confirmation of Josh Bolch's win for Illawarra Blue Stars in 1:59.75. Harrison Jerd for Sutherland in 1:59.90. And Brett Hall's third over the line for Run Crew in 2:78. So they're just working their way over to the start for the 1500 metres. Again, for those in the stadium, if you're in a graded 1500 metre race, you should have already picked up your hip numbers. But if you haven't, please get to the tent at the start-finish area and do so. In the meantime, we'll have a look at the start list for the men's 1500 metre D race, with Koji Howard due to run in lane number 2, position number 2, I should say, for Run Crew. Jacob Frankel for Ramwick Botany Harriers, coached by Warren Williams, in position number 3, just inside his teammate Ethan Howard, also of the same club and squad. Cameron Dudes of Bankstown Athletics with Michael Dooley in position number 5. Akira Howard for Run Crew in position number 6, and Isaac Wagner of Cherrybrook will round out the field for the men's 1500 metre D race in position number 7. Okay, so we're just about right for a start now in the men's 1500 metre D race. So off they go in the men's 1500 metre D race. Field of about 8 here as they go around the first of the graded 1500s. And young Koji Howard will be first away as they cross over and swing around to the main straight for the first time. Bankstown's Cameron Dodds now happy to go around all of them and take up a position at the front of the field. Young Akira Howard also in there for run crew. Sits second in the run, and now getting up on the outside is Ethan Howard of Randwick Botany Harriers and Jacob Frankel, also of RBH, but in the white singlet of Up and Running. Through the first 300, about 50 or so, and Cameron Dodds has kicked out a lead here of about 10, 15 metres or so. Doesn't have a PB considerably faster. In fact, there's others in this field with a quicker PB than him, so we'll see if he's able to hold it as they get around to the 400 now in about, 71 seconds or thereabouts that was. And Dodds starting to string the field out a little bit as they head up the back, and runs a third of the way through the race now. Having a look in behind them, in behind him is Ethan Howard of Randwick Botany, just in front of his teammate Frankel. And then comes young Koji and Akira Howard. Gary Howard also running with his young charge Isaac Wagner. So they run through 500 metres. And Dodd still managing to hold that lead of about 10 metres or so at the front of the field. But as I mentioned, doesn't actually have the quickest PB in the field. There are a couple of others with PBs quicker than him, including the man behind him, Ethan Howard of Randwick Botany. So expect this race to come back together a little bit with 800 to run in the men's 1500 metre D race. The Randwick pair working together well in Howard and Frankel. Both part of the same squad with Warren Williams and Up and Running. Warren also coaching with his son Jordan. A little gap back then to the run crew pair, the Howard brothers. And Dad Gary running up the back with Isaac Wagner, who's boxing on well. A PB of 5:29 down here. So Dodd's coming back to them a little bit now as they approach the 1,000. That lead of about 15 metres or so in the early stages has closed right up. Little gap starting to open between the Howards, with Koji getting a gap of about 10 metres or so back to Isaac. And the lead has now totally closed up as they hit the 1,000 metres mark. And in fact, Howard may well go around the shoulder of Dodds, along with his Randwick teammate. And they're 3 wide as they approach the bell in the men's 1500 metre D race. So Dodds did all the early work, but he's come back to them. And now the Randwick pair of Ethan Howard and Jacob Frankel running together in 1 and 2, with Dodds on the home track running third. And then a big gap back, as you can see on screen, to the Howard pair sitting in behind them, with Koji Howard just running in front of Akira, and Wagner running well with Gary Howard back in the pack. But all eyes on the front. Dodds hasn't given up the ghost here either, and is going to get after the Randwick pair and go back up and challenge for the lead once again and take it with 200 to go and 4:08 on the clock. Boys will all be on PB schedule or thereabouts here at the moment. 4:53 for Dodds, 4:47 for Howard, and 5:07 for Frankel. All these PBs are in jeopardy. So Dodds back in the lead that he surrendered a lap ago, ahead of Howard. 80 metres to run. Frankel looks like he's solidified third position, but Dodds has another kick to give and gives it strongly. And it's going to come home and take out the men's 1500D in about a 10-second personal best. PB as well for Howard and ditto Frankel. So the first three all running personal bests. Good battle between the Howard boys here with Koji on the inside and Akira on the outside. 5:07 and 5:04 their PBs. PBs for both the Howard boys as well. So if Isaac Wagner can run a PB here, and he's on track to do that, if he can lift down the straight, we're going to have a full field of personal bests in the men's 1500 metre D race. Isaac Wagner now coming home and is going to run a personal best of about 4 or 5 seconds here. Well done, Isaac. 5:24, wipes 5 seconds off his PB. Well coached around by his mentor, Gary Howard. But a full field of personal bests there in the men's 1500 metre B. Good way to start proceedings. So have a look at the start list now for the next of our graded races. The men's 1500 metre C race. Big field here of 12. And in position number 1, Keith Bateman had a huge run here at Milers 4. Nathan Moody of Bankstown Athletics in 2, Jed Marr, Sydney Striders in 3, Jack McPhee, the boss out at Sydney Athletics Academy in 4, Benjamin Woodhouse of Ryde in 5, William Sork of the Scots College in 6, Cody Sullivan of Kembla in 7, Aston Lake on his outside for run crew, Nick Woodhouse of Ryde in 9, Patrick Carolyn of Kembla in 10, Aidan Landy of the Scots College in 11, and William Litchfield rounds out the field in the men's 1500 metre C race on the outside. And they're off in that 1500 metre C race. Big field here. And a bit of a scramble to the front as they run through the first 200. The men putting themselves into positions of prominence early. Jack McPhee, the coach of Sydney Athletics Academy. Also the Bankstown man on his home track, Nathan Moody. And Moody will take up the front running here. The Ryde Athletics athlete, Ben Woodhouse, I think that is the youngster in there, sits in third position. And one back, one out is the Scots College athlete, William Sork, who's now just working his way and happy to sit 3 wide on the outside. So not a huge early pace here. Cody Sullivan back tucked in the middle of that pack in the white singlet. And back on the inside of the track is Jed Mayer of Sydney Striders, but in the light blue top. So still a leading group of about 7 or 8 here as they head around to the 400 metre mark. And they'll go through there in around about 69 seconds or 70, call it. But still a leading pack of half a dozen running together. And you can see by the fact that Cody Sullivan's happy to kick wide out into lane 2 for Kembla, that there's not a huge pace here being set by Nathan Moody on his home track. Jack McPhee, experienced racer and coach, sits in second, and Barefoot Bateman is back running through the 500 metres for Athletics East after running so well at Milers 4. Coming up to the 600 now, and they're just starting to string out a little bit here, so maybe a slight injection of pace with Moody ahead of McPhee. Then a little gap back to Cody Sullivan. Then comes the Sydney Striders athlete Jed Mayer. Woodhouse still happy to sit a little bit wider. And then in behind them is Pat Carolyn. And just starting to drift off the back of the lead pack now is William Sork. But Moody starting to string them out just a little bit more now. Might have been just a slight injection of pace. They went through 70 seconds for the first 400. And it's actually stayed pretty consistently through about 2:20 for the 8. But maybe not all these athletes are able to hold that pace as the leading pack just thins out a little bit more. Woodhouse still happy to run wide up the back. And Also looking to go with him and get a trail is Cody Sullivan of Kembla. Sitting in behind him is Carolyn too. So the Kembla pair running together. Bateman once again starting to progress his way through the field, just getting up on the back of some of these youngsters, and he gave a couple of them a lesson at Milers 4, Litchfield and Aston Lake there. And through the 1,000 now in 3 flat, so running at about, 4:30 pace here. And Ben Woodhouse now hits the front of the field for Ride, and McPhee manages to get a little dash up the inside and takes the lead as they hit the bell. Cody Sullivan also running strongly on the outside for Kembla, and it's really started to string out now. McPhee clearly had a plan to go at the bell and has done so and has put a bit of a gap into this leading half a dozen. So McPhee up the back straight for the last time. Gap of about 10 metres or so back to Sullivan. And then the early leader, Muty, just starting to fade a little bit here. Carolyn's in there as well for Kembla, as is Ma. But Woodhouse sits in 3rd position, just on the front of those guys. But Jack McPhee has managed to string the field out a lot in this last 400 metres. The only real danger coming from Cody Sullivan of Kembla, who's trying to lift. Gap back then to Woodhouse of about 10 metres. 4:03 on the clock as they swing into the straight. 2 in it for the win between McPhee and Sullivan. Sullivan coming at him. McPhee trying to respond and lift. Sullivan still coming and will go past him. The youngster from Kembla takes the win in 4:17, which will be a personal best for him. McPhee in behind him. Then comes Woodhouse, Ma, Muty, and Carolyn. That's a big personal best for Cody Sullivan of about 10 seconds or so. Gap back in the field now to William Sork of the Scots College. And I think this is Aston Lake of Run Crew having a good little battle there with Keith Bateman. They come over the line at about 4:44, 4:45. Little gap further back then to William Litchfield of Sydney Athletics Academy. And Rides Nick Woodhouse will round out the field for the men's 1,500 metre C race. Under 5 minutes in about 4:57. We'll run through this next start list quickly before they get underway. This is the first of our women's 1,500 metre races with the women's 1,500 metre B. And the field here in position 1, Catherine Herbert. In position 2, Ash Gardner of Kembla Joggers. In 3, Alyssa Goodall of Sydney Athletics Academy. In 4, Charlotte Middleton of Sydney Pacific. Claudia White goes in 5 for Bankstown. Celeste Carolyn and Ruby McPhillips, both of Kembla, in 6 and 8. Matilda Emmanuel of Randwick Botany in 9. Zara McCory of Sydney Athletics Academy in 10. Rhea Singh in 11 for RBH. Hannah Roots of Blue Mountains in 12. Jane Wagner in 13 for Hornsby. And Annie Fotheringham rounds out the field for the University of New South Wales on the outside. So off they go in the women's 1,500 metre B race. And a big field here, about 14 of them or thereabouts. In the early stages, it's Claudia White heading to the front of the field for home club Bankstown. And just starting to string them out a little bit there. I think that's Rhea Singh of RBH sitting in behind them. We'll have a look as they come into the straight. Singh just happy to sit 3 wide in the early running, so really no pace early on in this. In fact, Singh will be 4 wide as they come around to the first turn. Ruby McPhillips and Matilda Emmanuel Also in there, tucked back in on the rail, is Celeste Carolyn. So you could throw a blanket over them as they run through the first 300 metres. Catherine Herbert of Hornsby in that pack as well, as is her teammate Jane Wagner. But Claudia White going to take them through pretty pedestrian pace here in the B race, about 79 for the first 400. And you can tell the pace still pretty soft by the fact that Rhea Singh of Randwick Botany is happy to run all the way out on the outside of lane 2. A little bit of a change at the front now with Matilda Emanuel of RBH happy to go to the front along with Ruby McPhillips of Kembla. So we'll see if there's any injection of pace with that change in the lead. Claudia White happy just to sit back on the rail and get a bit of cover, and Singh's finally able to get in from lane 2 and takes a sit, one back, one out, with Alyssa Goodall of Sydney Athletics Academy just getting a sit in behind her on the rail, with a bit of cover being provided by Emmanuel and McPhillips. Having a little bit further back in the field, but still packed together, Charlotte Middleton of Sydney Pacific is in there as well. Ash Gardner of Kembla just sitting there a little bit back in the run. Celeste Carolyn also tucked up in there. But just this injection of pace now from McPhillips, just starting to string them out a little bit. And it's not the blanket field anymore. They're organising themselves into something more resembling a single file as the early leader, Claudia White, just drifts back a little bit. 2:38 or thereabouts through the 800. So again, not actually an injection of pace so much as the leader's able to just hold the same tempo while others aren't able to. And coming up to the 900 now, McPhillips is the standalone leader ahead of Emmanuel, and they've opened a gap of about 4 or 5 metres now to Charlotte Middleton and Alyssa Goodall, with Herbert there on screen bringing in the field. So you can see on screen now just how much that's opened up, with a gap about 50 metres now covering the leading group of 7 or 8. So the injection from McPhillips and Emmanuel has really strung this field out as they pick up the bell in about 3:37 or thereabouts. PBs around 4:53 and 4:56 for McPhillips and Emmanuel respectively, so very close together. And a standalone fourth now is third is Charlotte Middleton of Sydney Pacific with a 5 flat PB. So those are the sorts of times we're looking for PBs. Celeste Carolyn leads a little bit of a chase pack in fourth, but the battle's happening up the back straight now, with Matilda Emanuel happy to come out wide and challenge McPhillips for the lead. Both are going to be round about PB pace here if they're able to hold this. So Ruby McPhillips still leads. Emmanuel had a look at going past it but couldn't do it up the back. Charlotte Middleton also on PB pace back in the field. Ash Gardner leads this pack now ahead of Carolyn and Goodall. And Singh, who was prominent early, has just drifted back. But the battle at the front of the women's 1500B is between McPhillips and Emmanuel. Both are on schedule for personal best, but this is about the win. McPhillips has done most of the work since the end of the first lap. Emmanuel trying to come at her for Randwick Botany. McPhillips tries to respond but can't. And Emmanuel will take the win in 4:51, 4:52, thereabouts, just ahead of McPhillips. PBs for both of them. Middleton also comes home in 4:57 in personal best tempo. And a good battle in behind them now with Carolyn and Gardner, who hit the line in 5:04. And some good runs in behind them as well. But personal best once again for all of the front three in the women's 1500 metre B race. So some fine running there. We'll have a look at the start list now for the men's 1500 metre B. Mitch Ryan in 1 for Run Crew, Seth Healy in 2 for Sutherland Districts, Louis Donovan and Caleb Wagner for Run Crew in 3 and 4. William Gare and Sam Jones of Sutherland and Illawarra Blue Stars, respectively, in 5 and 6. Adam Brunch of Ride, coached by Ross Foster, in 7. Caleb Redijanka of Port Stephens, coached by Jason Maxwell, in 8. Noah Krecklenberg of Run Crew in 9. Matt Dawson of Delta in 10. Julian Wiley of Randwick Botany on his outside, coached by Jeremy Roth. And Josh Engel rounds out the field in position number 12 for Kembla Joggers. That's the field for the men's 1,500 metre B race. So if they go in the men's 1,500 metre B race, this should be a cracker. And quick dash to the front there by one of the Ride athletes as they head over through the first 100. And Adam Brunch it is of Ride, just sitting on front there of Caleb Redijanka. And they stringing out a bit more early on than the women's race. So a little bit more pace in this one. Early stages. Noah Krecklenberg of Run Crew also getting up into a prominent position early. Sam Jones also moving up on the outside for Illawarra Blue Stars, and happy to sit very wide is William Gare of Sutherland District as they go through the first 300. So coming up to the 400 metre mark in about 65 seconds or so. And William Gare happy to get up to the shoulder of Adam Brunch. So Sutherland and Ride at the front of the field. And Redijanka in behind them. So 2 by 2 at the moment. So they head up the back. Sam Jones still holding a strong position for Illawarra Blue Stars, but getting a lot more strung out now as they come through the 600. And William Gare still happy to sit one wide on the shoulder of Brunch. Renciarca just sitting and getting a lovely trail in there in third. And sitting in behind them is Krecklenberg, Run Crew, just in front of his teammate Caleb Wagner. So that's a leading pack of 5 as they head up to the 800. They were 65 through the first lap, and they're pretty much holding that tempo, just come off an inch. So it's about 2:11, 2:12 through 800. Bit of a move now coming from one of the Delta athletes. That's Matt Dawson, I think, on the outside, getting up under the shoulder of Jones, just trying to get himself attached to the back of this lead pack. A good shot there of Bunch and Neil and Will Gare. Seth Healy running there for Sutherland, a little bit further back in the field. But as they approach the 1,000 metres now, with about 2:45 on the clock, it's still Brunch who has done all of the leading. William Gare still sits on his outside, and the move's starting to come a little bit now. Renciarca gets up onto the shoulder of Brunch as they pick up the bell. And Renciarca not able quite to go past Brunch at the moment, but has put himself into a better position. William Gare just starting to struggle a little bit. One back on the rail. Looks like he might be slipping just a touch as the run crew boys of Wagner and Krecklenberger look to get up on the outside. Sam Jones also trying to make a run for Illawarra Blue Stars down the outside. And Delta's Dawson just starting to struggle a bit, but still half a dozen of them in it as they head up through the 200 to go. Krecklenberg for run crew trying to make a move on the outside. But Brunch has had all the shots fired at him from behind. Renciarca still trying to get at him as well. Krecklenberg also trying to come at him. That's Wagner, pardon me, for run crew in behind them. Wagner will drift wide. Try to get at Renciarca. Brunch will be a huge effort to hang on here. Doing all the work early. Renciarca coming at him. Brunch trying to hang on, but just going to get done on the line. Renciarca takes it out. Head of Brunch. Wagner's happy with the time in third. Then came Jones in behind them. Dawson coming over the long line now. Seth Healy for Sutherland. Mitch Ryan for run crew. And Josh Angle will round out the field, all of them under about 4:25. So good running in the men's 1500B. Adam Brunch did all the work to try and get a result, but just nailed on the line by Renciarca, probably entitled to be. And that will round out our graded 1500 metre races. For those here in the stadium, if you're in any of the A races, you should have picked up your hip numbers by now. Next races on the track will be the 400 metres, starting with the men's B, followed by the women's A and the men's A. That's the timetable for those watching along at home. So 8:08 in about 3 or 4 minutes' time is when the men's B race is due to get underway. And that'll be followed by the A races with the women's and men's 400s, followed by the men's and women's 8s. And the women's and men's 1500 metre A races will close out the program. So we'll have a look at the start list now for the first of 3 400 metre races. This will be the men's 400 metre B. David Mould goes in lane number 1 for the University of New South Wales. Lachlan Ash for Campbelltown Collegians in 2. Michael King for Trinity in lane number 3. And James Hunt for UTS Norths will run in lane number 4. Start list for the men's 400 metre B race.
400 now. I'm going to have to pack.
So off they go in the men's 400 metre B, full field with Mild, Ash, King and Hunt as they head around the bend. Very fast start from Hunt on the outside for UTS Norths. And he's running strongly up the back. Also running really well from the University of New South Wales is David Mould on the inside. He's already getting up onto the shoulder of Ash from Campbelltown on his outside. But probably Hunt and Mould, the best of them, as they swing into around the back straight. And coming into the bend, they're really starting to even up now with Ash coming into his running for Campbelltown. And it'll be Ash and Mould leading as they come into the straight. The early leader, Hunt, just starting to drift back between Michael King now. But the battle is between Ash and Mould. Mould starting to rally late for UNSW and will just get the better of Ash over Campbelltown. King ran a good back half of the race and Hunt faded after leading through the first 200. But a good run there from David Mould to take the win for the University of New South Wales. Just bring you some results from a little bit earlier. Confirmation of Matilda Emanuel's win for Randwick Botany in 4:52 in the women's 1500B. Ruby McPhillips for Kembla in 4:53. And Charlotte Middleton for Sydney Athletics Academy in 4:58. So PBs for all of the ladies in that race. We'll have a look at the start list now for the women's 400 metres as the ladies get their blocks sorted. Very UTS North's dominated race this event. The first four from the All Reds. Gemma Bratton, coached by Ron Bendel in 1. Emma Molino, coached by Renee Liddy in 2, as is Olivia Kaysen in 3. Bridget Oakley in lane number 4, the final of the 4 UTS athletes. Shannaray Royal for Illawong Reesby, coached by Cass Dooley in 5. And Sarah James of Sutherland, coached by Penny Gillies, rounds out the field of 6 in the women's 400 metre A race. Some quick results from that B race while we're waiting for the A to get underway. David Mould, confirmation of his win in 50.88. Lachlan Ash for Campbelltown in second, 51.01. Michael King for Trinity in 51.50. And James Hunt in 52.04. So off they go in the women's 400 metre A race, just the one scratching from this. So Bratton, Molino, Kaysen Oakley and James will make up this field. Fast start on the outside from Sarah James, the Penny Gillies squad. As they come into the back straight, it's Kaysen and Oakley of Norths just starting to pick up some ground in the centre of the track, and they've picked up the stagger with Kaysen going the best of them at the moment, and she's pulling streets ahead of this field. Is Olivia Kaysen, coached by Renee Liddy with a PB 54.8. And coming into the home straight, Kaysen with a lead of about 10 metres or so over Emma Molino. And coming into the straight now, it is Kaysen, and she'll take out the women's 400 metre A race ahead of Oakley on her outside. Emma Molino back on her inside, so Norths get the first four with Bratton, and Sarah James, who started fast on the outside, comes home in 5th position. Having a look at now at the start list for the men's 400 metre A race. I think we have a scratching from Ian. With just an inflamed Achilles, but Tom Glascott, again, a UTS North's heavy race here, as the 400s often are. So Tom Glascott in 1 for UTS North's, part of Ben Liddy's group. Tom Hunt in 2, part of the Fast Track 400 squad with Mike Hurst. Jordan Sarmento with Johnny Quinn in 4. Mason Cohen steps down to the 400 metres from his usual 8 in 5. Keegan Bell, part of the Penny Gillies group, in 6. Corey Firminger in 7 with part of Penny's group as well. And Oscar Pinterick with Mike Hurst runs in lane number 8. All of them with Norths, with UTS Norths in this field. That's the start list for the men's 400 metre A race. Just a quick result from that women's 400 metre A race. Olivia Kaysen with the win in 55.98. Bridget Oakley in 57.96. Emma Molino in 60.51. Gemma Bratton in 61.55. And Sarah James in 62.50. So just been called behind their blocks now in the men's 400 metre A race. So off they go in the men's 400 metres. It's a good field here. Sarmento very quickly away in the centre of the track for UTS North. Already picked up the stagger on the 800 specialist. Mason Cohen on his outside. Going well on the far outside is Pinterak, as is Keegan Bell in the centre of the track. But Sarmento, probably the best of them as they swing around to the home turn. Pinterak still running strongly on the outside. Mason Cohen starting to find a bit as they get further into the race, as you'd expect. Also running well is Firminger in 7, but Sarmento in the centre of the track, definitely the best of them with 80 metres to run. Good battle going on in behind him between Pinterak and Bell. Cohen starting to come into his running too, but Sarmento too good for them in the men's 4. Takes it out. Cohen might have got up for second, I fancy. Probably just ahead of Pinterak and Firminger. Back on the inside, Tom Hunt and Glassicott came home strongly as well. But Jordan Sarmento just too good for them in the centre of the track. So that's the last of our 400 metre races for the evening. Heading in now to the traditional milers main events of the 800 and the 1500. First up will be the men's 800 metres. And this, the start list. Thomas Fagona of Trinity, coached by Ben Liddy, part of the CPT team in 1. Rowan Laurenday of Illawong Reesby, coached by Father Paul in 2. Rob Dickinson has been a presence at all these milers meets, coached by Lindsay Watson of the Quad Squad in 3. James Healy of Kembla, coached by Paul McHale in position number 4. Riley McGowan of North Canberra, part of Des Proctor's group out of the ACT in 5. Joshua Atkinson of the Hills District in 6. Cameron Musgrove, huge run at this event last time out, also for North Canberra in 7. Kane Shields of Balmain, part of the same squad with Danny Andrus as Jaden Gill of the King's School. They go in 8 and 9. And Ben Thomas of Randwick Botany Harriers rounds out the field for the men's 800 metre A race. Strong field. And traditionally, one of the races of the night at the mile is the men's 800 metre A. And I'm sure tonight will be no exception. So just while they get themselves sorted for the 800, we've got some results from the men's 400. Jordan Sarmento, confirmation of his win in 47.50. Oscar Pinterick of North, second in 48.71. Mason Cohen in 48.76. Corey Furminger, 48.85. Keegan Bell, 48.92. Tom Hunt, 49.37. And Tom Glascott, 49.73. So the whole field under 50. And just about right now in the men's 800 metre A race, should be one of the races of the night. So if they go in the men's 800 metre A race, should be a cracker. Big field of 10 in it. And pretty evenly away, Lauren Day and Vagona, probably the quickest of them right on the inside. Vagona in that Trinity and Lauren Day in the blue of Illawong. Trying to get across them is Ben Thomas of Randwick Botany. Also prominent early is Riley McGowan from North Canberra, one of the ACT athletes, and going very wide is Kane Shields and Cam Musgrove on the outside, who ran so well at miles 4. So just sorting themselves out as they come into the straight for the first time. And it is Riley McGowan of the ACT who's found himself on the front of the field, just ahead of Ben Thomas. Little gap back then to Kane Shields. Sitting on his outside is Jaden Gill. And then in behind him is Josh Atkinson. And getting a little sit back on the rail is James Healy, but who now just looks to get himself out a bit wider. About 53 through the 400. Gill still sits fourth on the rail there. But McGowan doing all the work out the front, ahead of Ben Thomas. So they head up the back straight for the last time. The move's now starting to come down the outside with Kane Shields looking to get up. So is Josh Atkinson. Gill in there as well. They've withered themselves down to a group of 5. But Riley McGowan still leading the charge for the ACT Raiders. Trying to get the best of the New South Welshmen up here. Josh Atkinson for Hills looks to be the best chance for them at the moment as they swing into the straight, starting to get strung out at the front of the field here. McGowan with a PB of 149 comes into the straight ahead of Atkinson. Kane Shields trying to come at them as well, but McGowan doing enough here at the front of the field, and the ACT are going to nick this and take out the men's 800A, sub 150. Atkinson in second, and then a little gap back to Shields, who dipped late too. But it'll be sub 150, and that's a fine way to end the men's 800 metre racing at the Milers for 2022. 1:49.63, the official time for Riley McGowan. So sub 150, always fine running in the 800. And the ACT and Des Proctor's group get one over the New South Wales-based athletes. Next up on the track is the women's 800 metre A race. This should be a cracker. Co-main event billing for the half mile. Erin Blundell goes for the All Whites of Sydney University and Jimbo Fitzgerald in 1. Ava Honore of Sutherland, part of the CPT squad of Ben Liddy in 2. Nicola Hogg is on the start list for Norths in 3, also with Ben Liddy. Laura Roth, the former Australian champion at the distance, goes for Penny Gillies and Randwick Botany in position number 4. Tilly Ryan has won a couple of Albie Thomas 800s, knows this track very well, and also goes for Penny's group and Norths in 5. Georgia Wassell was a World Juniors representative for Sydney University, goes in position 6. Avi Bennett has been in such good form this season for Sutherland, runs for Paul Laurenday in 7. Ada Rand goes in lane 8, in position 8 for Ben Liddy's group in St George. And Fleur Cooper of Mossman and Emily Sun of Ride, also part of the CPT squad, and will go on the outside of the track in positions 9 and 10. So just having a look, it looks like pretty close to a full field here. So just slightly ahead of timetable here, but we'll get going if everyone's there. Just sorting themselves out in the positioning. Full field of 10 here in the women's 800A. So just the one out of the start list with Nicola Hogg, who I think will line up in the 1500. But right to go in the women's 800 metre A. Off they go in one of the co-main events of the night. This should be a cracker. The former Australian champion, athletes in form, World Junior qualifiers. This is a fantastic field. Tilly Ryan, probably the best away of them, did the pacing duties last week at the Sydney Track Classic for a fine field there as well. Just sits on the front of Laura Roff, former Australian champion Georgia Wassell, the World Junior representative, gets up on their outside through the first 200 in about 29 seconds or thereabouts. Amy Bennett sitting in a strong position there for Sutherland. And also in there is Ava Honore, her teammate in the blue singlet of Sutherland. Little gap back then to the St George athlete there, Ada Rand. And just starting to drift back is Erin Blundell, but not a huge amount of pace in this as they head up the straight for the first time with Wassell and Fleur Cooper happy to sit wide. Roff now finds the front with 400 to go. Big return here from Georgia Wassell as well. This is a big run from her, sitting up on the shoulder of the former Australian champion. Amy Bennett has been so good at the distance this milers season, and Tilly Ryan has won a couple of really big races on this track at the Albie Thomas over the half mile. So 4 absolute guns in it as they head up the back for the last time. Ava Honore's in there as well, and just sitting in behind them is Rand. And Wassell now comes out. Looks like she was doing a pace job for Roff. So Roff now swings to the front with 180 to go. Tilly Ryan is the big threat at the moment on her outside. The youngster trying to beat the defending champ. Amy Bennett and Ava Honore in behind them with Rand and Cooper. But 2 in it as they come into the straight with Tilly Ryan looking to go past the established star in Laura Roff. Ryan to the front. Bennett's trying to come at them as well. But Ryan does what she's done so many times on this track and wins a big race over half a mile. 2:05 ahead of Bennett, then Roff, then Cooper and Rand. Honore hung on well. Then came Emily Sun. And a little gap back in the field to Erin Blundell. But fine racing in the women's 800 metre A. And Matilda Ryan does what she's done plenty of times on this track and beats a class field to win over the half mile. Just bring you some official results from that men's 400 metre A race. Jordan Sarmento with the win in 47.50. Oscar Pinterak second in 48.71, and Mason Cohen third in 48.76. And the men's 800 metre A race, Riley McGowan of North Belfast in 1 foot. That's not right. Riley McGowan of the ACT in 149.63. Kane Shields in second for Balmain in 150.24, and Josh Atkinson of the Hills District in 150.25. That's the first 3 in the men's 800 metre A race. And that leaves us with the 2 1,500 metre races of the night, still running slightly ahead of schedule. So the first of those due to get away in about 6 minutes or so. We'll have a quick run through start lists. Zara Warland of Ride in 1 in the women's 1,500 metre A. Claire Spicknell of Kembla. Ruby Fry, Piper Simpson and Natasha Ward, all of Randwick Botany Harriers and the Warren and Jordan Williams group. Ruby Madden for Run Crew in 6. Nicola Hogg, World Junior qualifier for Norths in 7. Erin Blundell, guessing won't line up on the start line again in 8. Fleur Cooper, probably ditto in 9. Eloise Doherty in 10 for UTS North. Sophie Gosha, steeple specialist, but also runs the 1500 for Run Crew in 11. Mia Fry for UTS North in 12. Aspen Lambert in 13 for Trinity, and Allegra McGiven in position number 14. That's the field for the women's 1500 metre A race. So just some results from the women's 800 metre A race as well. Confirmation of Matilda Ryan's win for Norths in 2:06.90. Amy Bennett got up in the end for Sutherland in second in 2:07.48. And Laura Roth third for Ramac Botany in 2:07.96, back from illness and a bit of a niggle. Flor Cooper of Mosman 2:08.52. Ada Rand of St George 2:08.72. Ava Honore for Sutherland 2:09.13. Emily Sun of Ryde 2:12.30. And Erin Blundell 2:20.01. So just getting themselves sorted out at the women's 1500 metre A race. If you're just joining us at home, we'll have a quick run through the start list again. So Zara Warland, pardon me, in 1 for Ryde. Claire Spicknell in 2 for Kembla. The trio from Ramac Botany of Ruby Fry, Piper Simpson and Natasha Ward. Ruby Madden for Run Crew. Nicola Hogg, the World Junior Qualifier for UTS Norths in 7. Erin Blundell and Flor Cooper, I assume, will be scratchings after having run the 800. Eloise Doherty for UTS Norths in 10. Sophie Gosha in 11 for Run Crew. Mia Fry of UTS Norths in 12. Aspen Lambert for Trinity in 13. And Allegra McGiven chasing the World Junior Qualifier goes for Randwick Botany in position number 14.
so if we're, say, we're like counselors or stuff, we have to learn how to talk to a person that's in stress and all that.
So off they go in the co-main event of the night, the women's 1500 metre A race. Big field here with only a few scratchings from those who ran in the 800. But straight to the front of the field is Natasha Ward of Randwick Botany and Ruby Madden on her outside for run crew, as they head into the straight for the first time. Looks like we've lost Nicola Hogg from this field as well, which is disappointing. But coming into the straight is still pretty bunched together there. Leg room are given on the outside in the pink briefs for Randwick Botany, running strongly. So is Claire Spicknell of Kembla, and Piper Simpson of RBH also getting up onto the shoulder of her teammate Natasha Ward. So a lot of these young ladies are eligible for the World Junior Qualifier, which is 4:29. And going through the 400 metres now in about 69, 70 seconds or thereabouts for the first lap. And still reasonably bunched together in what is perfect middle distance running conditions once again here at the Crest. Breeze is all going away. It's about 22 degrees. Couldn't ask for anything better than this. Claire Spicknell now looks to take the lead of this race and gets herself into the control of it as they run through the 500. Mia Fry also just shot up to a position of prominence and is going to get a sit, one back, one off the rail. Piper Simpson still running strongly and will actually go up to the shoulder of Spicknell and take the lead as they run through 600. Mia Fry happy to go out into lane 2 to get up onto the shoulder of these ladies and try to take the lead of the race. But that's still sitting with Simpson, who now just comes around the shoulder of Spicknell. Natasha Ward, the early leader, sitting in there as well. And Sophie Gosha probably running the smartest of all of them, happy to just sit fifth in the running. Now just steps foot off the rail, but gets plenty of cover and plenty of support through the first couple of laps of the race without having done any work. So Gosha now just tucks herself in on the rail and takes a sit in behind the leader, Piper Simpson, with Mia Fry on the outside in the red of Norths. So Gosha, a little bit older than these other athletes, running a bit smarter. Good tactical racing. Spicknell now, who led through 400, just starting to drift off the back of what's become a leading group of 4 in Simpson, Fry, Gosha and Ward. Spicknell with a gap of about 10 metres or so back there. And then a further gap of about 20 or so back to the rest of them. So through the 1,000 metre mark now in about 3:06. And Mia Fry, who's sat wide for a chunk of the running, goes up to the shoulder of Gosha, who's kind of just been given the rail. Piper Simpson just starting to get onto the back of Fry, and Natasha Ward and Spicknell just starting to drift off them a little bit as they pick up the bell in about 3:23 or thereabouts. Probably not going to be on for the World Junior Qualifier here, but a good race at the front between the three, and then Ward and Spicknell, and a little gap back then to Ruby Fry of Randwick Botany. But up the back straight for the last time, still 3 in it. And all about the win now with Mia Fry on the front of Sophie Gosha, Piper Simpson in behind her. And still 3 in it as they go through with 200 to run. They'll have to close in about 30, 31 seconds for the World Junior Qualifier, so you'd think that's off the cards now. Simpson, though, hits the front. The move's starting to come now. Gosha goes around the shoulder of Mia Fry as well, who doesn't appear to have an immediate response. So just being strung out a little bit here by Simpson, who's got a PB of 4:39. That's in jeopardy. Gosha trying to go with her. Also PB 4:40. And Mia Fry in behind her 4:41. So all these PBs are going, but it's about the win. And Piper Simpson looks like she's going to hold this lead and come home and take out the win in about a 6-second personal best, 4:33. Then Gosha and Mia Fry, both personal best performances there as well. 4:42, be right thereabouts for Claire Spicknell, right on PB tempo. Natasha Ward, 4:30, 4:45. Gap back then to Ruby Fry. And then comes Allegra McGivern and Ruby Madden. And Zara Warland rounds out a fine women's 1,500 metre A race. But PBs for all of the top 3 in what was a competitive race. And any of theirs to win with 200 to run. We'll swing back around to the 1,500 metre start and have a look at the start list. It's a big start list for the last race of the night. In position number 1, Harm Sharp of Bankstown. In 2, Finley McPhillips of Kembla Joggers. In 3 is Max Rosen of Woden. One of the visitors from the ACT be looking to replicate McGowan's heroics and nick one for the nation's capital. Callum Burns, also of Western Creek, part of the Philo Saunders group. In 4, Hamish Hart of Knox Grammar. Runs with his Roffey teammate of Joseph Ryan of RBH in 5 and 6. Obviously, Yusuf, I think, as a scratching, was going to do the pacing duties for Sydney Uni. Richie Newell, also, I think, out of this field with COVID exposure. Kane Shields for Balmain and Denny Andrews group. Chevy Black of the Renegade Runners in 10. Luke Hintz of Kembla Joggers. And Luke Levy of Try Running, another one of the ACT visitors in 12. Harry McGill of Bankstown Athletics, coached by Lockie Chisholm, in 13. Daniel Franken in 14 for UTS North, part of Run Crew. Lockie Townsend for Dubbo and Brad Woods in 15. Mike McKeown in 16, and some potential pace on the outside of the track as well. But that's the field for the co-main event of the night, the men's 1,500 metre A race. So just a couple coming out of it, but in the hands of the starter now for the men's 1,500 metre A race. So off they go in the last race of the 2022 Milers Series, the men's 1,500 metre A race here at Milers 5. And a reasonably restrained dash to the front of the field as they sort themselves out, with Kane Shields of Balmain getting onto the front. And little gap back then to one of the Ramwick athletes, just picking up the hip number there, Richie Newell that is. And they're sorting themselves out, doing a reasonably single file. Hamish Hart just sitting on the front of Joseph Ryan. And they've sorted themselves out here. So looks like the pace is going to be reasonably on. Lockie Townsend then just sitting in front of Luke Hintz. And then comes one of the ACT athletes in Max Rosen from Woden. So single file as they go through the first lap, coming up to the 400. And they'll swing around and hit that mark in about 60 seconds flat. So right on that sort of 3:45 schedule. And Kane Shields is doing all the work at the front at the moment. He's strung them out. Richie Newell, then Hamish Hart, Joseph Ryan. Then a little bit of a gap back then to the Kembla pair. But they've been reasonably strung out at the front of the field. In fact, there's a lead group of 3 here starting to form. that's looking to get after the pace as they run through the 600. Still Townsend and Heinz leading what's becoming a bit of a chase pack, just in front of the Woden athlete Max Rosen. But through 700, there's a clear leading group of three who seem to be getting after a pace, albeit Shields is doing all of the work on front with a PB of 3:48. Set at the state juniors, just 18 still, Shields, sitting in front of the established open athlete Richie Newell, and Hamish Hart, also another one of the juniors. So boys sorting themselves out as they head up the back straight, as Shields now steps away. So it looks like he was doing a bit of a pacing job and managed to get them through the 800. So Richie Newell and Hamish Hart now in behind them as they run through the 1,000 metres in about 2:30 or thereabouts. Going to pick up the bell now with Richie Newell on the front of Hamish Hart, leading the 18-year-old from Knox. Gap back then. Some runs starting to come from McGill of Bankstown. Townsend still there. And so is Luke Hines of Kembla. Arm Sharp in amongst it as well. But up the back straight for the last time. There's only two in this at the front. It's Richie Newell and Hamish Hart. McGill trying to come at them, but plenty of ground to make up with Hines and Townsend. So they go through the 200 in about 3:18 thereabouts. Newell from Hart. McGill's now put himself into a clear third. Bit of a run coming as well from Callum Burns of Western Creek as part of Saunders' squad. That is closing up now with McGill and Heinz trying to get to the leading two. Richie Newell now just starting to fade a bit at the front as Hamish Hart takes the lead with 80 metres to run. Newell doesn't seem to have a response. Hart's going strongly. The 18-year-old for Knox at the front of the field. Going to get under 350, just about 349, 350. Richie Newell, big finish late from Harm Sharp. And that is a very good way to end Milers for 2022. We'll wait for the official times to come through. Go again, Tony. 350.50, the winning time for Hamish. So just a couple of seconds outside of the World Junior qualifier. But a fine way to end. We'll get some official results through just before we leave the live stream viewers for the night. The women's 1,500 metre A race, Piper Simpson, confirmation of her win in 4:34.48. Sophie Gosha of Run Crew, second in 4:36.40. And Mia Fry of UTS Norths in 4:38.32. And confirmation there of Hamish Hart's win in the men's 1,500 metres for Knox Grammar. But that rounds out the Milers program for 2021-2022. Almost 1,000 entries across the 5 meets held here at the Crest. We certainly hope we've provided some competition opportunities for the athletes looking to run over the middle distance and some of the other events. A big thank you to the technical officials who've made these meets possible, in particular Tony Smythe, Les Allen, Del Warwick and Jim Legg, as well as Dave Higgins, who are some of our regular technical officials at these meets and make them all possible. And a big thank you to the Bankstown Club as well and Athletics New South Wales for getting these meets on. It's been a pleasure having your company here at the Milers program for 2021-22, and we look forward to seeing you next summer and wish you the best of luck for the rest of the season. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at Nationals.